March Madness. Oh, what a crazy time of the year. You want to talk about hoop hysteria? Well, hoop hysteria benched my PT peer, Bob Jenkins, and the entire Speedweek crew. But let's talk about some AT now, because the Speedweek crew is getting some AT again. We're talking PTS, prime time speed. Forget about my AT, baby. Forget about it. Put it to the sideline. Get ready for some real March Madness horsepower. Take it away, baby.
The Daytona 500 winner goes to the White House. Who's fastest so far in qualifying for the Brazilian Grand Prix? And a special report on the sprint car Battle of Texas. This and more next on Speedweek.
Speedweek is brought to you by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Speedweek. I'm Bob Jenkins. After a 2-week break during which ESPN and Dick Vitale provided outstanding coverage of NCAA basketball, we're back and there's a lot to catch up on. We begin in a rather unusual location, the nation's capital. Daytona and Atlanta Winston Cup winner Darrell Waltrip came calling at the White House earlier today, and so did NASCAR President Bill France Jr., proud that the invitation was extended.
Well, I think it certainly recognizes the importance of the sport, as well as the importance of the event, the Daytona 500, and watching some of the other events that are taking place here at the White House, the World Series champions, whoever wins the Final Four, for instance, the Super Bowl champions. Many other sports have been represented here in the White House for some of their accomplishments and feats, and I think this it certainly puts motorsports in there with other sports.
Rainy outside, but a warm atmosphere inside the Oval Office. This certainly isn't the first time a race driver or the Daytona 500 winner has visited the president, but it doesn't happen every year. Little Jessica was there, of course, stealing the show with those White House credentials, and so were the First Lady and Darrell's wife, Stevie. Darrell met the president a few months back when Mr. Bush had just announced his candidacy, and Darrell said at that time he was impressed with Mr. Bush's knowledge of racing. It wasn't a long meeting. The president does have a country to run, but meeting with the chief executive is certainly something that few people get the chance to do. Well, Darrell joins me now from the White House lawn. Darrell, this visit has to make you feel good as a representative of all motorsports.
Well, it's certainly a thrill and an honor to be here today, and winning the Daytona 500 is the premier race in our sport, and it's one of the premier races in the country, so that gave me a little clout and a little extra help of getting here.
So what was the Oval Office like? Did the maids sweep and dust before you got there?
Everything was immaculate, and Mr. President was just as warm and kind as he could be, and the First Lady was there, and I tell you, she's so sweet and lovable. I just wanted to reach over and give her a big hug, but could not get a puppy. No way.
Yeah, we heard that's one of the reasons why you wanted to go. You know, Darrell, Richard Petty and several other drivers have become active in politics in one way or another. Does this White House visit give you any political ideas?
Well, being a member of NASCAR, it makes all of us involved in politics one way or another.
Darrell, thank you very much, and we'll show you how this guy won his second race of the season last Sunday a little bit later in the show. I mentioned that he's not the only race driver to be invited to the White House. So who's at the top of the list? Well, it's Cale Yarborough with 5 visits. Johnny Rutherford has been there on 4 different occasions, and the king, Richard Petty, has also been there 4 times. We turn our attention now to Formula One. Riccardo Patrese is the provisional pole sitter for this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, the first Formula One race of the year. Broadcast time here on ESPN is 1:30 Eastern Time Sunday afternoon. Was that a surprise? Well, the final tune-up last week in Rio also brought some surprises. The biggest surprise was the difficulty McLaren had in the early going. Unlike previous years when they'd been fast right out of the box, it wasn't until the final day that Ayrton Senna set quickest time. The car is not completely new. It's an updated 88 version, and of course it uses Honda V10 power. A late afternoon session was ended with a blown engine. Senna's teammate, Alain Prost, ended up 5th fastest. Just 0.02 of a second slower than Senna was Terry Boutsen in the new Williams-Renault combination. That was somewhat surprising considering last year's disappointing performance by this team. Benetton concentrated on race setups. They had 5 cars there with Ford V8 power. This used to be called the Cosworth engine, but is now legally referred to as the Ford DFR. Although Alessandro Nannini was 9 miles an hour slower than the Williams on the straights, Nannini was 4th quickest overall. Ivan Capelli will start the season in last year's March, while the '89 version is still being developed. The Judd engine put out enough horsepower, but the handling went away on the car after 7 or 8 laps. He was 6th fastest overall in the testing and thinks on race day he may have to make as many as 3 stops for new Goodyears. Ferrari did not participate in that Rio testing. We hear, though, they may be the team to beat this year. Now, during that test session, AGS driver Philippe Streff was seriously injured when he crashed at over 160 miles an hour. 2 days after the crash in a Brazilian hospital, Streff's heart quit beating, and the man assigned to look after him reportedly panicked and fainted. A French medical specialist who had just flown in arrived in the nick of time and was able to revive Streff. He's expected to recover, but the recuperation could be lengthy. Well, here are the 5 fastest speeds recorded in today's first qualifying session at Rio. The provisional pole sitter is Ricardo Patrese in the Williams. Second quick was Ayrton Senna driving a McLaren. Third was the Ferrari of Gerhard Berger. Fourth quick was Alain Prost, also in a McLaren. And Berger's teammate Nigel Mansell was 5th fastest in a Ferrari. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more Speed Week in a moment.
Speed Week is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And by Dodge Cars and Trucks. On the street or off the road, it's the new spirit of Dodge.
Coming up, 2 fires mar racing action. Shirley Muldowney escapes injury in Gainesville. But a Richard Petty fire is more serious in Atlanta. Did a little celebrating away from the racetrack. Monday was a day of celebrating for 1988 IMSA GTP champion Jeff Brabham. It was his 37th birthday, but there was more to celebrate than just being another year older. He was celebrating yet another victory in the Nissan, and this one was special. It was the first U.S. endurance race win ever for a Japanese manufacturer. The Nissan wasn't always a winner, though. In fact, it's been a tough struggle. Don Devendorf drove the early model here at Portland in '85 and didn't even come close to victory lane. The next generation Nissan, designed by Trevor Harris, was developed and tested in '86 and won at Miami in early '87. The team has been running its '88 model since Miami of last year, winning 12 of the last 15 races, and 2 were on the front row for Sebring's 12 Hours last weekend. The team didn't win at Daytona this year, but this team did. The Busby Porsche 962 with Derek Bell, Bob Wallach, and John Andretti. Wallach was reluctant to share driving with Andretti at Miami 2 weeks ago, but he did give John a longer stint here at Sebring, but he sure doesn't look very happy about it. Porsche had won the last 13 races at Sebring, and the Busby team had hoped to continue that string. But sections of the old airport circuit are rough on cars, especially suspensions, and that's what forced the car to the sidelines in the race's 7th hour. By sunset, Ari Leyendyke's Nissan had retired, and so had Dan Gurney's new Eagle Toyota. Brabham's Nissan continued to lead. John Nielsen and Price Cobb drove their Jaguar to its 3rd straight second-place finish. A Porsche 962 driven by James Weaver and Dominic Dobson was 3rd. The shifting problems that the Nissan team had at both Daytona and Miami were corrected here. Only a break in their rear cowling caused concern, and it was quickly repaired. The Nissan led all but 21 of the 330 laps and broke the race record by almost 4 miles an hour. Now, bear in mind, this is last year's car. The '89 model isn't expected until mid-year. It certainly has proven itself as a winner in shorter races, and now it has done so in a long endurance contest.
We tried to finish at Daytona and came up a little bit short, but it's definitely the first endurance race that Nissan has won, and I think it marks a tremendous stepping stone to the whole Nissan Motorsports program, and hopefully things can continue the way that they're going, and we can do and compete and try and win a few more of these type of races.
There were 2 incidents of fire that scared the auto racing community last weekend. One of them involved a big name in the sport of drag racing, Shirley Muldowney. First round competition at the NHRA's Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida. Shirley's familiar pink car is in the near lane, Connie Kalita in the far lane. Connie smokes the tires off the line. Shirley's run looks good, but then the engine lets go, fire erupts, and burns off the chute.
I didn't know I had a problem. till actually way down the other end when I went for the chutes, and they simply were not there any longer. I thank Lamb for these carbon fiber brakes. They're awesome. They really did a good job getting the car stopped.
Shirley lost in the next round to Eddie Hill. Trivia time. When was the last time a Chrysler product won an NHRA Pro Stock event? Answer, in 1979 with Bob Glidden driving a Plymouth Arrow. Well, this Dodge Daytona is being driven by Darrell Alderman, and his opponent here in the semifinals is Glidden in his Ford Probe. Despite a slower speed and ET, Alderman defeats Bob, whose unbeaten streak in the NHRA this year ends after 2 races. And the Dodge Daytona isn't finished yet. In the finals, Alderman's opponent is Frank Iaconio. Darrell defeats Frank for his first ever NHRA title. His only other final round appearance was in 1987 at the U.S. Nationals, where he lost to Bob Glidden. Other division winners at Gainesville, Ed McCullough in funny cars, and Darrell Gwynn won his first Top Fuel event of the year, defeating Eddie Hill. Now, many drag racing fans thought the magic 300-mile-an-hour barrier would be broken, but the best was Connie Kalitta's 286.9. And speaking of speed, NASCAR is reducing the size of the carburetor restrictor plates on Winston Cup cars at Talladega and Daytona again by 1/16 of an inch. And rear deck spoilers must have an angle of at least 20 degrees. Bill Elliott says they'll be lucky to reach 190 miles an hour at Talladega with the new rules. Now, after Talladega and Daytona, the third fastest track on the Winston Cup schedule is Atlanta. The one-lap track record was increased by nearly 1/2 mile an hour there by Alan Kulwicki to nearly 177 miles an hour. Alan would not be a factor in the race, however. Rusty Wallace was, at least for more than the first half. Remember, he won here last fall to end the '88 season. Telltale signs of engine problems began to show with more than 100 laps to go, and they soon became terminal. Brett Bodine's loss of control in the 4th turn triggered a 6-car crash that involved Jim Sauter, Lake Speed, Kulwicki, Derek Cope, and Rick Mast, who found Banquet food sponsorship for this race and Darlington. Everyone escaped uninjured. Richard Petty actually led 8 laps, but then the STP Pontiac began to backfire. When he came in for a pit stop, the gas can wasn't attached properly, and fuel began leaking down the side. The crew continued to work routinely, changing tires on the right side. Then when the car backfired again, flames erupted, causing momentary panic along pit road. The fire was quickly extinguished, but gasman Robert Callicut had already been critically burned over 25% of his body. Although not life-threatening, the painful burns will take months to heal. Despite the severity of the fire, NASCAR says it will not change its policy and require fire suits on crew members. With 14 laps to go, a tire equalized and Jeff Bodine crashed after being in the top 5 most of the day. Jeff wasn't hurt in the incident, but the car was junk. Dale Earnhardt and Darrell Waltrip both pitted at this time to get ready for the sprint to the finish. The race out of the pits was close. NASCAR ruled that Darrell crossed the line first and so was placed ahead of Dale for the restart. Both passed then leader Dick Trickle in Mike Alexander's car when the green came back out. Trickle, by the way, has signed up for the Rookie of the Year program. Darrell went on to beat Earnhardt, Trickle, Kyle Petty, and Sterling Marlin. We saw the Icky Shuffle again, but this time DW uses the hat instead of a helmet. He split one in Victory Lane at Daytona. So Darrell has won 2 of 3 races this year. The NASCAR point structure rewards consistency as much as winning, though. So Darrell finds himself 4th in points behind Dale, Jeff, and Alan, but ahead of Marlin. Besides that Petty fire, there was another close call on pit road. Bill Elliott completed the entire race with his broken wrist, but there was this spin on pit road along the way. His new dual master cylinder brakes locked up, and then the wrist certainly didn't help any.
The way my hand was, I couldn't maneuver good enough to try to save anything, and I mean, I just totally screwed up. You know, the fact that I hadn't been in a race car in a while, and it's just a bad situation, and I just made it worse.
In slow motion, you can see how close Bill came to hitting several crew members, including his brother Dan. Dan, did this tell you anything about Bill's ability to drive the entire race this weekend in Richmond?
Maybe it tells me something. I don't know if it tells him anything. I'm going to be careful next week.
And, Bill, what did Dan say to you?
Dan never said anything.
Those comments in Indianapolis Wednesday as Bill had an early morning appointment with his orthopedic specialist, Dr. Joe Randolph. The wrist brace he's been wearing has been replaced with a new one that he'll wear only when driving.
We want to prevent any reoccurrence of this injury should he be involved in another accident. But I suspect after a month or so he won't need this at all to drive.
Elliott is, of course, the defending Winston Cup champion, but he's got a lot of making up to do already. After 3 races, he is 23rd in points, and he's 216 behind points leader Dale Earnhardt, headed into the 4th race of the year, which is coming up this Sunday at Richmond, Virginia.
Relive those great sprint car days of the 60s and 70s. High-quality, professionally produced sprint car thrills is just $59.95. The most exciting, action-packed racing you'll ever see. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO. Sprint car thrills or Sprint Car Classics Volume 1, just $59.95. Both available in beta or VHS. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO. Dick Wallen's Sprint Car Thrills or Sprint Car Classics, just $59.95 each. Visa and MasterCard welcome. Call 1-800-992-VIDEO now.
One of the great advantages of doing business with a firm like Schwab is that you're dealing with professionals across the whole country. They're creating financial advantages for the individual investor.
Many of our customers transfer their other brokerage accounts to Schwab because we make it easy. We help the customer complete the right form, they sign them, and we do the rest. It's that simple.
Call today for free information about Schwab services. 800-873-7900.
I suppose you were expecting someone else.
Pronto, the fastest growing name in auto parts today. Pronto, featuring quality Michigan 77 engine bearings and McCord engine gaskets. Michigan 77 and McCord, proud sponsors of the NASCAR Engine Builder of the Year Award, congratulate David Evans for a job well done and winning the 1988 Engine Builder of the Year Award. The same track-tested, proven performance goes into the Michigan engine bearings and McCord gaskets you buy for your car.
When you need to know about auto parts, ask the pro at Pronto.
The NIT tradition of great teams and great players continues on ESPN. Only 4 teams remain. See the NIT semifinals Monday night at 7 Eastern live on ESPN.
His continuing travels across the U.S. found Larry Nuber in the Southwest for grassroots dirt track racing. Larry?
Bob, sprint cars were in Texas and Oklahoma this past weekend, and for the first time since USA came on board, they were face-to-face in the same neck of the woods with the World of Outlaws.
The spirit of Texas has always been unique, so much so the quest for freedom almost made this territory its own country. The struggles for independence here scar the pages of history, like the most famous battle of Texas for the Alamo. But the 1989 battle for the Lone Star State was fought in the trenches of dirt ovals last week. The traditional ruling monarchy of sprint car racing, the World of Outlaws, dug in near Houston.
Competition's real tough. I mean, they're missing a couple of the big names they've had over the last few years, but you throw out those 3 or 4 guys, they got the rank and files a lot tougher here than it is in the USA deals.
With Sammy Swindell and Steve Kinzer supporting USA exclusively, Bobby Davis Jr. and Brent Kading have become the leading outlaw warriors. The combat was tame at Houston, as first Davis on Friday and then Kading on Saturday picked up wins. From the historic viewpoint, the new circuit, USA, is revolutionary. Their weekend base camp was 250 miles north in the Devil's Bowl near Dallas. If crowd count is any indication, the weekend decided nothing. Both groups had enough people to support their own defense funds. USA has the allegiance of the most decorated sprint hero, Steve Kinzer, but he has not been winning battles lately. Friday night, though, he started on the outside pole. With Doug Wolfgang, Kelly Kinzer, and local Eddie Gallagher 3 abreast, Steve won, finally. Yeah, it was just a preliminary main, but his losing streak has even stolen headlines from the 2 sparring groups at times. Rain stopped the USA march Saturday. Cancellation often means an unexpected night off with wife Dana and the family for Steve. Usually they spend the night in their permanent home for the season, the motorhome. And that's where we talked to him about his unusual 5 months with no wins.
Steve, you know there are those who will say that you have been moving over intentionally to make it easier for others to be competitive for the overall benefit of USA.
No, I would never do anything like that. I'm a race driver, and that, you know, my job is to go out and win, and no matter what kind of situation that comes up on me, as when I strap in a race car and the race has started, I think about one thing is winning the race and doing whatever I can to win it. And I would never be in that situation. It's just any type of race driver knows that they want to win, and it really doesn't matter. That's the bottom line, and that will not ever happen, and never has happened.
Although the drought has lasted 5 months, that only spans 10 races.
Sunday was an exclusive World of Outlaw event day in nearby Oklahoma City. Now, geography allowed it. The big question was, would any of the USA stars make the 3-hour drive north to compete with the World of Outlaws?
The wintry weather certainly could have been used as an excuse for boycotting this race, but nearly 4,000 showed, and even 4 USA regulars raced, among them Wolfgang. Although Racing USA, from the beginning, he has said on open dates, I'm going to race where the best purses are. Points leader Brent Kading's day ended without honor, but not as violently as the 2 number 23s of Rocky Hodges and Greg Woolley. Wolfie, meanwhile, started at the back. After Davis and Hillenberg traded the point, the Wolf tracked down leader Davis. But Bobby never surrendered, and the 2 circuit point leaders settled their private version of this sprint car war. And as for the major conflict, well, it's best described as a Mexican standoff, and only the first shots have been fired.
Davis's car is unique in that it's powered by a Ford engine. This is the first time in World of Outlaw history that an engine other than a Chevrolet has led the point standings. Now, before the weekend started, USA's Vice President of Business Operations, Gary Carley, was terminated, making him the second VP fired in the past 6 months. The USAC Silver Crown dirt cars will return to the California State Fairgrounds in Sacramento for the first time in 19 years on June 4th. Their last appearance there is the subject of this week's Dick Wallen Racing Classic. Here's auto racing historian Donald Davidson.
It's the Golden State 100 at Sacramento in 1970, when the dirt track 100 milers still count towards the USAC national title. That's Mario Andretti setting the fastest qualifying time with a Gurney Westlake-powered machine. Hey, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it, right, Mario? The 18 fastest qualifiers line up for what will be the last champ race ever at the old California State Fairgrounds. Into the lead from the outside of the front row goes Bobby Unser in number 16. But Paul Sotomayor is back to challenge within seconds. It only takes a half a mile down the backstretch, and Mario regains the lead going into turn 3. But hold on, lightning is about to strike. That's Johnny Lightning. Here comes Al Unser from 4th starting position, down the inside on the main straightaway, and the 1969 and 70 Indy 500 winners head side by side through turn 1. Al prevails. It's only lap 2, and the race already has its 3rd leader. Al has been undefeated in the champ dirt races this year, and he's not about to let this one get away. Johnny Rutherford loses an engine, spins, and Mario Andretti has nowhere to go as they both clobber the rail. It's been quite a weekend for Al. He won the 300-miler on the pavement at Trenton just the day before. Even J.C. Agajanian helps Al celebrate his 10th championship race win of the year.
Coming up on the Speedweek calendar this Sunday at 1:30 Eastern Time, same-day coverage of the Brazilian Grand Prix from Rio de Janeiro.
Life's full of simple pleasures, like the comfort of Levi's jeans. Or had you forgotten?
There's a rough road ahead with no end in sight. Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
Quaker State is quality engineered to exceed every single American, European, and Japanese car maker's U.S. requirements for maximum engine protection. So pistons are protected from friction mile after mile. Valves are protected from wear year in, year out. That's why Quaker State engines run strong and run long.
Quaker State engines don't know when to quit.
The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
You'll find it at the heart of every Dodge machine competing today. It's on the track and off the road. It's the new spirit of performance.
The new spirit of Dodge. The new spirit of Dodge. It's just a pure and natural beer. So icy cold, so crisp, so clear.
Of all the beers that are cold filtered, only one has that distinctively clean, crisp taste. Budweiser, cold filtered and Beechwood aged for over 110 years.
New cars plus new engines means an exciting new game for Formula One drivers. The season begins at the Grand Prix of Brazil, Sunday afternoon at 1:30 Eastern on ESPN.
This past weekend's Mickey Thompson Off-Road Grand Prix proved to be just as exciting and controversial as ever. Robbie Gordon's bid for his third straight victory was successful until officials decided otherwise. With more, here's Jerry Garrett.
All right, here's a little quiz for you. Which of the following incidents from recent Mickey Thompson Stadium races resulted in a penalty for rough driving? How about Dan Esslinger's hit here on Frank Arciero Jr.? Or how about Walker Evans stuffing into the back of an unsuspecting Roger Mears? Or how about Robbie Gordon driving right over the hood of David Ashley? Or Ashley's attempt at retaliation that earned him, whoa, a rollover off the biggest mountain on the course? What about this menage a trois between Mears, Gordon, and David Ashley again? Or finally this incident where Robbie Gordon allegedly taps Walker Evans, causing him to roll over. Well, the answer is that last one there. The beneficiaries of that penalty were Glenn Harris, who was awarded the victory, and Roger Mears, who got second place. Harris said he didn't see the infraction that caused the penalty, but he certainly wasn't going to argue with the outcome.
Absolutely. It's the name of the game. Take advantage of the situation and go all the way to the bank.
The other classes at Seattle went off with less controversy, fortunately, but unfortunately, not less impact. Reporting from Seattle for Speedweek, this is Jerry Garrett.
And that's it for this edition of Speed Week. We'll be back next Friday night at 7:30 for our final show in that time slot. We leave you this week with some extracurricular activity at the 12 Hours of Sebring. So long, everyone.
Speed Week has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. And by Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you.